fitness enthusiasts and ultimate Frisbee aficionados to the Tobu Fitness Podcast, your guide to elevating your game and mastering the art of ultimate Frisbee through the lens of strength and conditioning. Whether you're a seasoned player or just stepping onto the field for the first time, this podcast is your one-stop destination for unlocking your true potential. This is the Tobu Fitness Podcast with your host, certified strength and conditioning coach, Justin Shelby.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the podcast. This is episode number 9 of the Tobu Fitness Podcast. Got another interview today with a special guest, Manny Eckert from Seattle Sockeye. Manny, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Doing well. Thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, for sure.
I guess, can you start off by giving the audience just a little bit of your background, kind of who you are?
Yeah, so I've been playing Frisbee since 2008. I started in elementary school, which is pretty common in Seattle. I started in 5th grade and then went through phases with it, where it kind of escalated, I guess, as I got older. And so I was really into it in high school, and then I got more into it in college, and then later in college, that's when I started training and working out more consistently. And I think I got a lot better at that point when I started lifting weights and running outside of practice.
And then what has your, I guess, like the last couple seasons been like for you? Like, what teams have you played for? Kind of where have you been around?
Yeah, so last few years, I played my first full club season in 2019 with Voodoo, or now known as ECU. And then after that, it was 2020 and 2021. I played on mixtape for a year. I wanted to play on mixtape because throughout the course of the pandemic, I developed some really close friendships with players on that team. And so I think playing a season with them, well, I thought at the time that playing a season with them would be really special, and it absolutely was. And I'm glad I played that season with mixtape. And then in 2022 and 2023, I played with Sockeye.
What's the Seattle ultimate scene like?
I think the Seattle ultimate scene, it's no longer at a higher level than the rest of the country or the rest of the world, because our top teams are not just dominating. But I think in terms of sheer numbers, Seattle is probably still the largest ultimate community in the world. We probably have the most leagues and pickup out of anywhere. Probably the most number of high school teams. So I think it's really cool. And it was really cool growing up in Seattle and just having a million opportunities to play, whenever I wanted to, year round, pretty much.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know, for me, I grew up in the Northern Virginia area. DC scene is pretty cool. But it wasn't until I moved to Austin that I personally got involved a lot more. And for me, it was just the weather. The weather's nicer. You can play, longer year round. So that's so interesting to me that Seattle has such a nice ultimate scene, given it's kind of notorious for not having the best weather, I guess.
I mean, I feel like that is a little bit of a myth, because in Seattle winters, you can keep playing Frisbee almost every day, because it doesn't really snow here that much. It doesn't get that cold. The coldest it'll really get is around 30 to 35. But most of the time in the winter, I would say it's in the 35 to 40 range or higher. And you can pretty much do most of the things outdoors that you want to. You might just get rained on, but it's usually not pouring down. It'll just be a drizzle. So I think it's a lot easier to play in Seattle year round than probably most of the country.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, I know one of the reasons I wanted to ask you to be on is just because I think talking to very high level players and just kind of getting an understanding of their background, kind of what got them to the level that they're at now, is something that I'm really interested in. And I think it provides a lot of information to people out there that are maybe striving to be at that level, or they're kind of right at that point of breaking in, right? And some of the stuff that they can be doing to kind of improve their own game and get to that top level. We asked Instagram for some questions as well. So I guess we can start off with that. We've got a question from Colin Hill. Shout out, Colin. How did you become such a great break thrower?
So I started playing Frisbee at a young age. So I've just been throwing for a really long time. And when I was growing up, I would always just ask my dad if he wanted to throw at the park, or friends or teammates. So in sheer numbers of throws, I think the number of throws that I've thrown is very high, and the time that I've spent throwing. So any type of throwing you can do is good and is going to have an impact. But specifically in high school, one thing I did a lot, and I would say honestly that's probably the most growth I had as a thrower, was throughout high school. And after high school, I have probably focused more on other aspects of my game. But I did this throwing routine called Kung Fu throwing, which was developed by Lou Burris. And it's a combination of getting more consistent at just like flat forehands or flat backhands at different distances. And the other side of it is challenging your release points. So working on your high releases, your low releases, your releases that are far away from your body. And so I think both of those aspects, consistency and consistency in the things that you can already do, and pushing the boundaries also of what you can do. I think those are two important aspects to train for anyone who wants to get better at throwing. And also just consistency of like, how often are you throwing? Because you're going to improve at throwing as long as you're training throwing. And if you train once a month, you'll get a little bit better. And if you throw once a week, then you'll probably get a lot better than if you were only throwing once a month. So
it sounds like the Kung Fu throwing then is something that you would recommend. Do you have, I guess, just given your experience as a player, but then also I know you coach a lot too. Do you have some like go-to throwing drills or games or anything like that?
Yeah, some of the partner throwing things that I like to do when they're just two people are, so a lot of stuff in the Kung Fu throwing routine, which is just working on very simple things from different distances and just getting really consistent at those. Because when you're actually watching throwers throw breaks in games, most of the time they're not doing anything crazy. In fact, like 80+% of the time, they just are stepping out quickly and far, like away from their body, and then just they're able to throw a flat throw or an OI or whatever, and they're just able to do that quickly before the defender can react. So yeah, I think one, working out or working on like going from a ready position with the disc in the middle of your body to pivoting out far away from your body and quickly. The vast majority of club players can just get so much better just from getting faster and more consistent with that. Besides that, I mean, some other stuff that I already mentioned from Kung Fu throwing, like just working on your low releases, your high releases, just a ton of different release points, and also your pivoting. In that routine, there's also this thing called compass throwing, where you're basically you're keeping your pivot foot in the middle and you're stepping out in 8 different directions and trying to throw it to your partner. When I was coaching cut camp with Jessie Schaffner this summer, she also had our campers do some one-legged throwing, which I really liked, just balancing on one leg and kind of isolating your throwing motion, which I think is beneficial if you want to throw breaks, if you don't have to go through like your entire throwing motion to throw a good throw. So those are some of the things you can do with a partner. And I think there's also a lot of value to just playing a lot if you want to become a better thrower. Like growing up, I played a ton of pickup, a lot of mini, especially, even though you tend to throw different things in mini than you do in 7v7, like maybe more blades or scoopers. At least I do when I play mini. I think the I guess the more important aspect of that would be being able to see the field quickly and basically increasing your processing speed, like being able to see the field quickly and see what options are open, learning if you can hit those options through trial and error. And you'll just get a lot of reps if you play pickup or mini or goaltee, or just seek out whatever ultimate is available to you.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense, because I guess on one side of it, there's the skill aspect that you've just got to rep out just to get the technique down. But that'll only take you so far until you're actually responding to something, like you're reacting to some sort of visual stimulus, or like you're saying, you're actually taking in like some visual input and then having to make a decision off of that. So yeah, definitely makes sense. I think just to relate it kind of to the stuff I talk about, like a lot of people ask me like, oh, I do all this stuff in the gym. Like I do squats, I do lunges, I do cleans. Like how can I actually start to get faster on the field or jump higher? And it's like, well, are you actually sprinting? Are you actually jumping? Like you got to bridge that gap a little bit. And that's kind of what it sounds like. Like you've got to actually be in those situations where you're throwing in game, reacting to something or to a receiver. Real quick, like I can already kind of see the questions flowing in, right? You talked a lot about like partner throwing and stuff. Any like quick tips for people that don't have a partner or access to a partner, just some solo throwing stuff?
I mean, that's tough because I usually advocate for, like I would always prefer to throw with someone else than just throwing into a net. But throwing into a net is better than nothing. And if you don't have anyone around you to throw with consistently, then you can throw into like a softball net or a soccer goal. And that will be useful for working on your mechanics and throwing form. And you can always film yourself and compare yourself to what you can find online. Like specifically, Ultiworld has this playlist of a bunch of the best throwers in the world throwing in slow motion. So I think for any new players who want to try to identify the mistakes that they're making, they could try to film themselves in slow-mo and then really compare themselves to like Valeria Cardenas or Jimmy Mickle or whoever, and kind of see the patterns that they're seeing in those great players and try to emulate them.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's really great advice. Cool. Well, let's pivot here a little bit. So we've talked about the skill side of ultimate and throwing, which I know it's like your bread and butter, but the training side, so to increase like your athleticism, I know that's something like when we initially talked, you said that's something that you wanted to kind of improve upon. What is training been like for you recently, kind of now that we've started working together?
Yeah, so on the Tobu fitness plan, pretty much right now I get 5 workouts a week. 2 lifts are pretty high intensity, and I try to do those alongside other high intensity events in my day. Like if I'm going to go participate in a scrimmage and I want to play hard in the scrimmage, then I'll do a lift on the same day. And then the next day I'll have like a lower intensity lift or just an off day from the gym. And then I'll just try to get my body moving in other ways, like biking, or I've been playing a ton of pickleball recently, which I really enjoy. And then once a week, I'll also have field workout, which will be a lot of plyos and some sprints and usually some shuttles at the end, which are terrible, but I assume will make me a better player.
Something I didn't kind of prepare you for is we've kind of started like a little rivalry between you and Cam Brock from the Alley Cats. So a little background for people. Manny has some 50-yard shuttle runs that I've been adding in for him. And he's been asking why Cam Brock only has 30-yard shuttle runs. So I gave Cam Brock some 50-yard shuttle runs. He did those today, but I sent him over the results that you had from your 50-yard shuttle run, like the scores that you got for each interval, just to motivate him a little bit. So he did those today, and they were pretty similar scores, which was cool
Pretty
to see.
similar.
Yeah,
Cam is a lot more athletic than me, I will say. So if I can keep up with him and be similar to him in shuttles, then that's pretty good.
he said it was a good workout, but I know like he was saying his goal initially, and then I sent him over the results that you got, which were higher than his goal, and he was like, oh, okay, like that's what I got to go for now.
Nice.
And so he said he challenges you now for the ISO long lunge to try to get at least 90 seconds.
I'm way behind in the ISO long lunge. I think if my right leg is in front, I could do a lot better probably. If my left leg is in front, I'm noticing that I have a deficit there right now.
Interesting. Okay. So a pretty big difference between the sides.
Well, every time I've done them so far, I've done my right side first. So that might be a big deal. So maybe this week, I think I have that workout tomorrow. I'll do my left side first and see how that feels.
Yeah. I think that'd be good. We can switch it up to like a max set. Yeah. For people that don't know, the ISO long lunge is where you're basically at the very bottom position of a lunge with your back knee just holding over the ground, and you're just your back knee just hovering over the ground, and you're just holding that position. And Cam Brock got 3 minutes. So a 3-minute hold on each side. It's intense. That's really intense. I did 2 minutes today and I was burning. So yeah, usually like 2 minutes is kind of the goal that I set out for people. So he challenges you to get that. So yeah, I like that little kind of like rivalry we've set up too.
Yeah, I think those shuttles are the hardest shuttles that I've ever done. 50 yards, 5 sets, 1 minute on, 1 minute off. And in terms of the distance covered, I'm pretty sure it's also the most distance that I've ever run in a set of shuttles. And there's not a lot of recovery time. So those are fun, but I ran them with a friend last week and I crushed her. So that was rewarding.
Nice. Nice. What is, I guess, like outside of us working together, like in just kind of like your training background in general, like what are some exercises that you found that have like really worked well for you? Maybe some like advice for newer players getting into lifting, stuff like that.
Exercises I've found worked well for me. Well, first of all, literally any exercise is better than no exercise. Like when I was 20 years old, I was coming off an injury. I was right after my first breakup too. So I was very motivated and I just decided to start lifting in my living room. I had a couple kettlebells. I was just doing some goblet squats with like, I don't know, 35 pounds or something, which is not a lot of weight. And then I would do like a set of goblet squats and some push-ups and some crunches or whatever. And so I knew nothing about working out, but I did that really consistently. There was also a pull-up bar in my house. So and just from doing those basic exercises, I noticed a significant increase in my athleticism. And people on my college team would tell me like, wow, Manny, you look faster now. So if you're looking for a place to start, just like do anything. Since then, I mean, I have done Game Point Performance, I've done Strive and Uplift, which I've talked about before, and those are two great programs, which I would also recommend to anyone. I guess some of the similarities that I've noticed between the three programs that I've been on is the use of contrast training. I think that's what it's called when you do like a heavier lift and then you do a plyo afterwards. I feel like that has been a great tool for me, and whenever I am doing those types of lifts very consistently, that is generally when I feel most explosive. And besides the type of exercise that I'm doing, I think consistency is just really important. Like probably the most explosive I have ever felt is right before I started playing Ultimate again in 2021, because it was during the pandemic and nothing, we didn't really have a lot to do. So I was just working out incredibly consistently for that stretch before that club season. I was lifting pretty heavy but also I was doing a lot of cleans, and my form was probably not optimal for those, but I feel like those helped me become more explosive. And I was running a lot, not like in terms of distance, but doing a lot of sprinting. So during that time period, going into that season, I felt very bouncy.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I like your point too about it. It's just about consistency at the end of the day. Right? I think a lot of people will kind of like program hop, they call it, where you're just kind of like bouncing around, like looking for almost that like magic pill, that secret exercise type thing, and like expecting really, really quick results. Like you'll do one workout plan or you do a couple exercises for a week or so, and then you switch to the next one. And it's like if you can stay with something for an extended period of time that's structured to progress you, right? It's structured to show you results kind of long term. Like that's going to be the best thing. Like very rarely are you going to find anything that gives you like these instantaneous results and at least like lasting results. It's all about consistency at the end of the day. So I like that. But yeah, let's pivot again here. So you said you're playing for Seattle Sockeye, a very elite level team. What kind of goes into like an elite level club season, as far as like, practices, training camps, managing injuries and tournaments? Like what's a season like?
Well, I appreciate you saying we're an elite level team because a lot of people would disagree right now. But I think that's a fun question to answer because I think a lot of Ultimate players and people outside the Ultimate community too just have no idea like how much effort it takes to like go to nationals. And I happen to know exactly how much effort you can put into a season and still not make nationals. So just speaking off our training schedule this summer, like we had tryouts in April and May. We probably had like 4 or 5 weekends of tryouts total. And those were usually like 3 or 4 hours. Typically we would do that on both Saturday and Sunday. And I mean, really for Sockeye, I mean, you just have to dedicate your whole summer. Like the entirety of the season has to be dedicated to the team because that's like the bare minimum of what it takes to achieve the goals that we want. And, we had a very bought in team this year and with overall really good attendance, and we still did not achieve those goals. So it's not just like a one-time thing that you can do and have success. You have to do that over a sustained period of time. So I think we had like maybe 2 or 3 off weekends from tryouts up until regionals. And besides that, it was usually like 6 or 7 hour practice weekends over the course of 2 days. I mean, it's a grind. Like you have to work really hard. And in addition to those weekend practices, we would have a weekday pod, which was really more like a practice this year because we had really good attendance at those pods, which would be a couple hours. And we would kind of hone in on some of the skills that we wanted to focus on, but still finish with like some really competitive mini, or not like maybe 5-on-5 or something with a slightly smaller field. Yeah, what goes into it is just a lot of hard work and competing against each other constantly.
And can you walk me through like one of those weekends? Like I feel like to the average person, they hear 6 to 7 hour like training weekend and they feel like that's a lot. And I know even like you said, that's a lot, but what does that breakdown kind of look like?
Well, it's pretty much what you'd expect, I guess. We get to practice, like most people probably get there 15 to 30 minutes early and are just tossing around or hanging out, building social bonds with teammates. And then we start practice, bring it in, have a little huddle, talk about what we're going to do, go through a warm up, like a physical warm up, and then get some, do 4 lines or whatever, get some throws in. And then I think often after that, we'll probably start with a scrimmage just to like help us be really competitive right off the bat, kind of set the tone for the rest of the practice. And then from then on, it'll just be like, we do a drill and isolate one skill that we're trying to work on, and then do another scrimmage, or maybe like a controlled scrimmage where there's some parameters that we're working around to focus on what we want to focus on. And then on Sockeye, after practice, we do this thing called BAGO, which stands for Bag of Joy. And it's where a couple members of the team will prepare a meal for everyone else to eat. So they'll bring that to practice, and then we will all eat together right after practice ends, which is great. It's like, I think that's honestly been one of my favorite parts about playing on Sockeye, like being able to eat a bunch of delicious food right after practice ends is awesome. And it's always just really fun to hang out with teammates in that time period. And we'll stay for like 30, 45 minutes after practice and play games or whatever and just enjoy each other's company, which I think is really important when you are like going at each other's throats all practice, which we do.
Yeah, little bonding afterwards. That's such a like an ultimate Frisbee thing too, thinking about it. Like a couple of the teammates bring food for everybody to eat. Like that's such a cool kind of unique like experience that we just see in this sport, which I think is awesome.
Yeah, I think that's because community is a really big theme in Ultimate, because it's not like that's not like a professional sport where everything is taken care of for us. Like when you're playing Club Ultimate, you have to be the ones to make shit happen all season. Like it's people on the team who are doing the logistics and planning everything. And so Bago is an opportunity to come together again and like build community.
Cool. Well, we've got another question from Instagram that I think will kind of segue nice into this. But so you're playing Sockeye now, which is open. But you said you played like mixed state before, which is obviously mixed. What was that transition from mixed to open Ultimate like?
Well, personally, I can only speak to my own experience, but for me, open was much, much harder in terms of the players I was matching up against, in terms of the intensity of practices, in terms of the commitment all summer long, like the total time spent. And on mixtape, I was able to step into a pretty big role my rookie year on the team. That was a lot of fun. And I guess it was the same role that I had done for a while in college, kind of like an offensive handler is going to get a lot of touches, be around the disc a lot, and distribute. And then on Sockeye, my rookie season, it's really rare to make a top level club team and just like step onto the O line. So I knew that was not going to happen, and so I had to. And I had gotten cut from Sockeye multiple times in the past, so I knew what I had to do to make Sockeye was to improve my defense and athleticism and just like ability to stay, especially with cutters downfield, and have the speed or positioning capabilities that I would not get exploited as a defender. Those are qualities that I had to work on to even make the team, and they're also qualities that I got to practice a lot playing pretty much all D-line my rookie year. So I say for anyone who wants to make a top level club team in their area, defense is always the way to go, because unless you are one of the best offensive players in the world, you're probably not just going to walk onto an O-line, because those spots are reserved for players who have been on the team for longer and are also better players. If you want to make the best team that you can, become a good defender.
I think that's good advice. Yeah, I know that's stuff that we've talked about for my own personal goals too. So I've really taken that to heart. And I know hopefully that helps out some other people that are kind of in a similar situation. But yeah, I know you're really passionate about club, and I know you've played in the AUDL before. You don't play at the moment. Kind of what are your thoughts on club versus AUDL?
My thoughts are, again, this is from my perspective, which is limited because I have only ever played in the West Division of the AUDL, but my perspective is the highest level of competition is not in the AUDL. Even though a lot of the best players do play both at this point, I think club it tends to be the focus for a lot of players. And in the AUDL, the competitive balance of the league is just like the league is not competitively balanced, right? You have one team, New York, who I guess has an infinite payroll and they can pay their players rent and whatever. And then you have a bunch of other teams that most of their players are making like $50 for the whole season. And so obviously a lot of the best players are going to go play for New York. Versus club, where you had a stacked team like Pony and they still didn't make it past quarterfinals. And you've got a team like Sockeye that has a legacy of being really good in the past, and we didn't even make nationals. So I think the competitive balance of club is a lot wider spread. And even the champions of the men's division this year, Truck Stop, like they took third in their pool. So I feel like among the top teams at this point, like anyone can beat anyone if someone is having a good or bad day. So that's an aspect I like about club. I also just like the rule set of club a lot more. I do not enjoy the big AUDL field. I think having more space to work with promotes raw athleticism over skill, and like the ability to throw far over the ability to hit a tight window. So that does not benefit my skill set as a player. And it's also just really hard to play defense in the AUDL, and especially like team defense. And I think, again, that comes down to promoting individual athleticism, because with more space on the field, it's just a lot easier for the offense to isolate one-on-one matchups. That's another factor why I don't play in the AUDL anymore. And also just from a vibes perspective, I was talking about community earlier in Club Ultimate, and I think it's a lot more rewarding to be part of a community that like does a lot of stuff together. Probably in the AUDL, there are a lot of teams that are like that are like really tight-knit communities, but I think there's something special about a club season where you're making it happen yourself, and like the team is doing their own fundraising and like doing all the logistics, and it's not always a fun process, but I do think it makes the process or the ending result more rewarding to include that type of work, I guess.
Gotcha. Like it's more like grassroots kind of.
Yeah, exactly. To like the objective of making money in the AUDL, which I think is the end goal, right? It's a for-profit organization. Like that's not what I play for at this point, right? Like I play for the people around me and to push myself and become the best player I can be. And I feel like introducing the monetary aspect changes the game in a lot of ways. Like, you got to change the rule set to make sure you can broadcast the games on TV channels, and then you have to use referees, who I also have a lot of that whole concept. I just have a lot of issues with. So it's just a very different game, and I enjoy the club game more for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, I guess back to your point about like highlighting raw athleticism more in the AUDL. Do you feel like there's maybe like different training that might go into it? Because I know at the end of the day, we're playing Ultimate. It's just kind of in two different like settings that breed a little bit of a different game. But do you feel like there's different training or kind of ways to prepare that was more advantageous for club, and then one that's more, or that one that's better for the AUDL?
I think on that huge field, endurance is very important. Just being able to run at 80 or 90% for a long period of time, because those games are exhausting. Like one AUDL game for me can be as tiring as a whole tournament day for a club with 3 or 4 games. So just being in really good shape is very important. And I think straight line speed, with a larger space to work with, I would guess that straight line speed is a little bit more important than the ability to like change direction in small spaces. Well, that's probably also dependent on your role on the team. So I guess those are a couple things. And I guess maybe from a team-wide perspective, like I would probably prioritize skills that work more on winning 1v1 matchups rather than like team-wide concepts for offense and defense, I guess, because I think it's a little bit harder, especially on defense, to have all 7 players working together to play good defense in the AUDL. It's probably, I would guess, I haven't watched really that much AUDL footage outside of the West Division when I played for Cascades, but my guess is it would be harder to implement those team-wide systems, and instead playing 1v1 defense is just really important.
Yeah, that's interesting stuff. I think especially your point about like the endurance aspect, like that would be my guess too. Have you seen Kurt Gibson's new YouTube video breaking down Antoine Davis?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I watched that. Yeah.
And one of the things that he keeps talking about is Antoine's endurance, which when he first mentioned it, I was just like Antoine's known to be a super fit guy. Like he literally is a trainer for GPP. Like he's got to be a fit guy. But then the more he broke it down, I was like, that's interesting. Like it really does look like it was an endurance thing that he improved over the last year that made him more dominant. So yeah, I think that's a great point there about the endurance. Well, let's kind of pivot a little bit more now. So we've talked a lot about ultimate, right? The throwing aspect, the athleticism aspect, but you mentioned you play a lot of pickleball. And I know you play some other sports. Like how important is it to you personally, like mentally, right? Just kind of maybe give yourself a break or even physically, like to play other sports?
Well, that's something I've been thinking about a lot about this off season, because before regionals, I broke my finger climbing. I was going for a dyno and I just inadvertently slammed my hand against the wall really hard. And then I couldn't play at regionals. And it was not on my throwing hand, but it was basically I couldn't use my left hand to catch at all. Like any type of impact with a disc moving at like more than 2 miles per hour was very clearly not good for the recovery of that injury. So it sucks to not be able to play at regionals, and that kind of made me reevaluate my priorities, because I was climbing a lot throughout the summer, playing some pickleball. I also play a lot of dodgeball, which is something I picked up last year and has been really fun. Part of my off-season goals and my future in-season goals too are just to prioritize my ultimate training above all else. So my routine right now is typically like I'll do my workout in the morning or early afternoon, and then if it's nice outside, I'll go play some pickleball because that's really fun. But right now, ultimate is the priority for me, because that is what would be most rewarding for me to succeed in if that happened. But these other sports, pickleball, dodgeball, I canceled my climbing gym membership because I was like, I will never get hurt climbing again. I refuse to do that. Pickleball and dodgeball are significantly less strenuous on the body, I would say, than climbing. So I think those are fun things to do. Especially pickleball is like an off day workout if you're playing doubles, because you don't have to move around that much. And maybe you could speak more on like the physical crossover between those sports, because I don't really know if playing pickleball makes me a better Frisbee player, but I do know that it's a fun thing to do. And part of being a good ultimate player is, living a balanced lifestyle and doing things outside of ultimate that make you happy. And so I guess that's my goal when I am playing other sports, is just to put myself in a good mental space.
Yeah, 100%. That would be my guess, right? Is like you're saying, like a club season is so intense and you're sacrificing so much, and you can only maintain that for so long. It's like sprinting. Like you can try to sprint as long as possible, but eventually you're going to get to a point where you're just going to have to stop. Like you're going to have to slow down that pace. So yeah, my guess would be that like having an off season where you're still staying active, but you're like doing other things, just kind of lets you like almost like avoid burnout in a sense and like kind of reset a little bit. I know a couple times too, like kind of when I've programmed in some conditioning for you, like you said like, oh, I play pickleball or I play dodgeball, which I think is perfect. Like that's a way more fun way to get conditioning in than like a 20-minute jog or a 20-minute bike. That's like kind of mundane and you can just like turn your brain off. Like there's because you're getting a whole host of movements. It's not just the same repetitive thing, right? You're getting change of direction. You're getting like the visual stimulus and reacting to things, and you're getting the fun, like you're saying, which I think is super, super important. So that's where I would really see it the most, is like, even if it's not a intense cardio workout, like obviously if you go out and do shuttles or if you go out and do like a fast tempo run, that's going to be a huge cardio workout. But if you're just trying to do like kind of some light cardio to build up a good base, just to kind of recover, like that's where I would, like, if I had the option to program in pickleball or dodgeball for other people, that's where I would do it to replace that.
Yeah, and speaking more on the mental side too, like Sockeye didn't make nationals this year, and it fucking sucked. And I felt like a failure for being injured and letting the team down and not being able to contribute on the field. And I'm sure many of the people who were playing also felt like failures. Even for all the teams who did make nationals, almost all of them lost at some point, right? For every season, there's only one winner at the end. And so if you're consistently every single year of investing all your emotional energy into one outcome at the end of the year, and you're falling short almost every year because that's the nature of sports, then that will take a huge mental toll on you. So I think it is it's been enjoyable for me to invest some of that energy into other activities, so I just don't get super in my head and like feel terrible about myself whenever I don't meet my goals in ultimate.
Yeah, that's fair. Like putting that competitiveness and that drive into other activities every once in a while. We're coming up on time here, so I want to ask just one more question, and then we'll kind of go into like a little speed round here. This is one that I've been thinking about recently, so I'm interested to hear kind of where you go with this. But I'm a big believer in a lot of times when we're trying to investigate things, or even just like the greatest minds out there, they're not really the people that come up with the answers. They're just the people that ask better questions. That's all science is. That's all experimenting is. It's just asking better questions until we eventually get to an answer. And I always find it interesting to see like what the questions are that the greatest minds are like pondering, right? And like for people that play at a high level of ultimate, like what are the things that they're thinking about? Like I want to know what keeps LeBron James up at night, like we're wondering about basketball, right? So like, what are some of like the big things within ultimate or your own game or your own training that you've been kind of like pondering recently?
Well, I can't tell you what the greatest minds have been pondering, but I guess I can tell you what I've been pondering, thinking about my last 2 seasons with Sockeye, where we've run 2 very different offenses, and not just different from each other, but also different from any offense I've ever run before. Even though I had mixed experiences running those offenses, it was really fun to try a totally new thing each year. And so both of those things have just gotten me to try to think out of the box for future ultimate strategies. And so I guess just I have been thinking a lot since the season ended about just different ways that you can use all 7 players on the field on both offense and defense, and kind of watching some film from years past of teams that have been successful, and I guess really just focusing on teamwork rather than like 1v1 offense or defense in isolation.
All right, let's finish it off with something new. Tried it about 2 episodes ago, but we'll try it again. We're going to do a little bit of like a speed round, right? So I'm just going to kind of rapid fire through some questions, right? You don't have to worry about answering super, super quick, but we've got a lot of questions to go through. So we'll keep the answers kind of short, trying to answer in under like 10 seconds, something like that. So yeah, what's your favorite type of highlight?
I love footwork highlights, specifically when towing a disc inbounds that is really hard to catch.
Do you have a favorite one?
Yes. Khalif, playing with him at nationals, college nationals in 2016 versus Texas A&M, and he skied like 2 people and kept his toe in bounds, and it's on film. And the Texas A&M players, Dalton was one of them, they didn't even see it, and they both called him out, and then the observer ruled with them, and he was called out of bounds. But the film reveals that he was in bounds. It was an incredible play.
Ooh, that's the worst, when the observer also gets it wrong.
Khalif is really good at that, though. He has a lot of great footwork highlights.
Do you have any memorable ones?
I don't think I really have any good ones that are on film. No, not really.
Most of yours are
highlight guy.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. You're mostly throwing highlights. Here's another couple from Instagram. What's most rewarding for you about coaching?
Okay, I think it's just seeing improvement in players, especially the ones that are really enthusiastic about Ultimate and are just constantly asking me for feedback and what they can do better, and just like they're giving those players feedback and seeing them implement it over the course of a season or multiple seasons is awesome.
Do you have a favorite age group that you like to coach?
Yeah, high school.
Nice.
Any younger and they're really unfocused, and any older and I don't get paid. So
Yeah, high school is that perfect middle ground then. What's your ideal day look like?
ideal day. Right now, I've been in a pretty good routine, and that is usually I wake up and then go to the gym and lift, and then come back and make a huge meal because I eat a lot of food, and then I'll go play pickleball for a little while, and then go coach Frisbee for a couple hours, and then come back and I don't know, maybe have dinner with a friend or just hang out with my roommates and play video games.
What do you play?
I've been playing Overwatch recently. My roommate got me into it.
Oh, nice.
I'm pretty bad. I don't play very consistently, but I tend to play a few games and then I lose and get really mad, and then I'm like, I'm never playing this stupid game again.
That's fair. That's fair. So what qualities do you feel like, or just quality, do you feel like separates elite players from the average player, like, sectional level, regional level player?
Yeah, taking into account the two of the best players that I know, two of the players that are better than me in the Seattle scene on the male matching side, Khalif and Trent Dillon, and two of my close friends as well, just like knowing both of them really well. I think the main thing that separates them from everyone else is just their hard work and passion about Ultimate and anything else they do in life. Like Khalif and Trent and probably most of the players in the country who are at the top of the Frisbee scene, just they don't really miss workouts, or maybe they'll need a little bit of time off, maybe like a week or something, but I guarantee you neither of those guys, in fact, I know for a fact that neither of those guys took much time off after regionals or nationals. Like they're right back in the gym or doing whatever workouts they do. And they're just very dedicated. If you want to be good at something, like much better than a lot of other people, then you just need to outwork them.
Are there any other qualities then? Like, because this is another question coming from Instagram. Somebody asked, like, what makes like a true grinder? And that's what it sounds like somebody that's very hardworking, like the two that you mentioned, like they're grinders. Like, what other qualities have you noticed in like people that you would consider a grinder?
I think doing little things right too, like prioritizing recovery. A true grinder can't just go really hard 7 days of the week because it's not sustainable. So following a sustainable model and doing the little things right, I don't know, eating right, sleeping right, all of those things that will actually lead to improvement in what you want to improve in.
Yeah, because it's the stuff on the field and in the gym, but everything outside of it is also just as important, if not like possibly more important at times. So yeah, 100%. Cool. That's all the questions I have. Manny, where can people find you? And do you have any coaching services you want to plug?
Yeah, sure. People can find me on Instagram. My Instagram is Manny Eckert. I offer film breakdowns if people want to do that, or like consultation calls if you want to talk about Frisbee, or like tell me your goals and how you want to reach those goals. So just hit me up, or if you have any questions, I'm generally down to just chat about Frisbee. If you want to shoot me a DM on Instagram or on Twitter, my Twitter is @FrisbeeManny.
All right, cool. Yeah, thanks again, Manny, for being on.
Thank you, Justin. It's been a blast.
You've been listening to the Tobu Fitness Podcast. We hope you've enjoyed the show. If you did, make sure to like, rate, and review. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, hit us up on Instagram and YouTube at Tobu Fitness. And to get info on one-on-one coaching and training programs, hit the website at tobufitness.com. Thanks so much for listening, and see you next time on the Tobu Fitness Podcast.